In today's episode, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Guy who brags about his education for an entire conversation ends up with foot in his mouth. Email you every time I leave the office before 5 p.m.? Absolutely. So let's get started. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for some background, I worked at a hospital for 2 years during college, and in those 2 years I had 3 different managers. The first manager was a cool guy, and I had an incident where I was sent home early from work almost every day for about a month. This was normal. If you were discharged from a patient, and there wasn't another to go to, you were sent home on standby. Somehow, all of those times I was told to go home on standby, the person who told me to go home coded it wrong into the system, and it showed that I called out all of those days, which gives you points. 14 points equals termination. Because of this, I somehow racked up 7 points, enough for a verbal warning, and got a call from my manager during class. I answered, he told me what was going on, and I ended up proving I was there all those days, and was sent home by the supervisor. I thought it was a done deal. We got a new manager after that, and she was cool, but only stayed for about 3 months. Enter the crazy manager. Annual evaluations were coming up, and we all had a sign-up sheet to pick a time for our evaluations. The day I had mine, I was working a split shift because I had class that began 15 minutes after getting off at 12:30 p.m. Usually I'd get off at 6:30 p.m. I had my evaluation scheduled for 9 a.m. While at work, I got pre-approval and would remain on the clock. I was working in the ER that day, and the patient I was with had been up all night and finally went to sleep when I got there. This patient was just waiting for transportation so they could leave, so they slept almost the whole time I was there. I figured that since I had an exam in the class I was going to later that day, that I would study for my exam. I have always been told that I could do schoolwork if there was nothing else to do. 9 a.m. rolls around and I didn't get called up for an evaluation. Oh well. I asked a nurse to cover me for a bathroom break, and when I came back, he said that some lady was looking for me. He pointed at her, and I didn't recognize her. She came over to me, introduced herself as the new manager that was training, and told me to come up during my lunch break for my evaluation. A lot of things wrong with this. A. I now can't eat until after my classes are done at 5 p.m. that night because of time. B. It is a state requirement if you work 6+ hours, you have to get a 30-minute lunch break, and C. They missed the original time I signed up for, and all the spaces were filled, so I wouldn't have an evaluation if I didn't comply. Okay then, sure. I'll clock out for my lunch break and not get paid for my evaluation during the time when everyone else is getting paid. I went up and she was with our current manager who was training her, but crazy manager ran the meeting. She looked shocked that nurses and coworkers had nothing but good things to say about me. Current manager left because she assumed the meeting was almost over since I had glowing reviews. Wrong. As soon as she stepped out, crazy manager started. Whisper screaming? She was angry that I was studying while with a patient, and how irresponsible it was, even though the patient was totally chill, compliant, and mostly sleeping. That's also when I found out that those points I got with the old manager that I thought had been fixed were still there. She started ranting about how I don't take my job seriously, and how I am lucky I am not getting fired. Excuse me lady, you aren't my manager yet? I just sat there in silence though, slumped in my chair listening to her ramble, that if she had it her way, my coworkers and I wouldn't even be allowed to have a book in the room with a patient. Most shifts we were bored because patients slept all day, so we have nothing to do. So I start to realize that my lunch break is ending in 10 minutes. 5 minutes. And by 2 minutes left I finally spoke up. She had been whisper screaming at me about how I'm always late and need to take the company time seriously. I said okay, well I can't be late again and get another 1/2 point on my record, so I gotta go. Picked up my stuff, smiled at her, and rushed to a station I could clock in at. She was livid. This first interaction with her sparked something inside of her to make it her only goal to get me fired and sink the ship we were in. She began changing a lot of rules that made the nurses we were working with so pissed. She was taking away almost every way we could help a patient, so that our job became basically useless. Of course, I had a plan. I took all of her new rules and complied with every single one. Patient is a fall risk in getting out of bed? Call the nurse to handle it. Patient is getting angry with me? Call the nurse. Patient needs to use the bathroom? Call the nurse. I could handle all this on my own, but her new rules said that everything we do has to be done with supervision of someone else, including handing a patient a urinal in the bed. These nurses got so mad that me and all of my coworkers were doing this, so I explained to them it was the new manager's rules. Nurses were flocking up to crazy manager's office after their shift to file complaints about how she made our job basically useless. Not to mention the second that she was done with training, she was giving written warnings to most people for petty things, and this is where the malicious compliance temporarily stopped for me. I thought I was in the clear for all that when I checked my email and behold, an email saying I need to sign paperwork, or code 4 I have a written warning for you. I walked in and she was giving me a written warning for all those points I racked up from a mistake by another person almost a year ago. I explained the situation to her, and she tried to act all friendly with me saying I'm so sorry about this. The other managers weren't doing their job and so my hands are tied and I have to give you this. I then told her that I don't think I have enough points for a written warning, and she slid me the piece of paper saying it was a written verbal warning that I had to sign. What? Since when is something verbal in writing? I told her I already got a verbal warning from 2 managers ago, and she just said my hands are tied, I need you to sign this. I knew a bunch of my other coworkers who had gotten these had just walked out of the room without signing, so that's what I did. After all of the nurse complaints to her, and her realizing that she was sinking the ship of our jobs, it's almost like she just kept pushing new rules and trying to make the ship sink faster. I sent her a 2-week notice because I couldn't handle the job anymore with school, and I was getting treated like crap there even without crazy manager being there. I met up with one of my old coworkers that still worked there about 2 months later, and she filled me in. They had another new manager. She told me that crazy manager told everyone that she was retiring, which made no sense since she was in her early to mid-40s. I don't know if she quit, got laid off, or fired, but I know she definitely didn't retire at 40-something. No one ever saw her again in the hospital, so we don't know where she is now. Sorry about not having complete closure to the story, but I figured I'd post it anyway. Guy who brags about his education for an entire conversation ends up with foot in his mouth. Not sure if this fits here, but this happened, and I wanted to post about it. Attended an online work conference recently, and everyone was from different companies. We had an informal Zoom together later to introduce ourselves and network around. In topic of conversations, college education comes up. For some context, colleges in my country are divided into different tiers of importance. A group of national colleges, let's say Tier 1, are considered prestigious to get into, with low acceptance rates, and the entrance criteria is just a really hard exam. Culture here is that kids study almost 4 to 5 years of their high school life, shunning extracurriculars, and almost everything else to get into top-tier colleges. It's considered an honor if your kid goes to a Tier 1 college, because some of them are so smart they keep Ivy Leagues as their safety schools. There's also Tier 2 and 3 colleges, which are great too. It's what people choose when they don't get into any Tier 1 colleges. Then there are local/regional colleges which don't have any branding associated, which is where most graduates in the country are from, since nationally ranked colleges are crazy competitive. So in this conversation, this asshat starts bragging about being from a Tier 2 college, and how he represents the best, and how smart he is because entrance exams in my country don't consider anything but your brain power. Other people are nodding along and just humoring him, but they're uncomfortable AF. He's essentially putting them down in a passive-aggressive manner, belittling their second-rate local college education. Some of us countered that entrance exams don't mold you to be a successful person always, because a lot of grads from these colleges don't have people skills or extracurriculars due to spending their entire childhood studying, and that you can succeed even if you're not from a national college, if you're truly smart. Dude gets mad at us for questioning him, and says since none of us belong to his brand, we don't even know what we're talking about, and we're just jealous of his premier education, and are trying to justify it to ourselves. He senses everyone turning against him, and says if you knew the quality of my degree you'd get it. If you want I can even help you guys with improving your personal brand so that you can also try and succeed. You know, as if everyone at the conference wasn't already in the same industry and almost the same positions in our great jobs. Cue my petty MC. I'm from a Tier 1 college, and while I don't generally broadcast my credentials, I'd been waiting all conversation to use it against him. I go, I think you could help me better with your knowledge. I'm from Tier 1 University, and I'd really like to improve my brand concerning this. What do you think I should do to get a better job now? Dude's face turned red and he confirmed my college like 4 times after that in disbelief, because I didn't fit his image of what a Tier 1 grad should be like since I have good interpersonal skills and a lot of hobbies, and then shut up in embarrassment and turned his video off. Email you every time I leave the office before 5 p.m.? Absolutely. I used to work for a company that had a 15-minute clock in /out rule. Basically, you could clock in up to 15 minutes late or clock out up to 15 minutes early, and you didn't have to tell anyone or get it approved. If you were going to be later than 15 minutes or needed to leave more than 15 minutes early, you had to tell your manager. If you were an hourly employee, you still had to make sure you were working 40 hours a week. This was a really helpful rule because the office was located in an isolated city with mountains on one side and the ocean on the other, and most of the workers commuted over a tricky mountain pass to get to work. When this happened, I lived in the mountains outside of town and my spouse, and I only had one car, so I was using the 15-minute more than usual. One day my manager told me she had to talk to me about my timesheets. She told me that she was worried because the previous Wednesday, I'd clocked out at 4:55 instead of 5, and that I'd only worked 7 hours and 55 minutes instead of my full 8-hour shift. We did not do shift work. I was confused because I'd come in 20 minutes early the next day to make up for it. I asked her if I'd worked less than 40 hours that week and she said no, I'd worked 43, we were allowed 3 hours of overtime a week. She said I wasn't allowed to leave the office before 5. I asked if they'd done away with the 15-minute rule and she said no. I was still really confused. My manager told me that from now on, I had to email her every time I left before 5 p.m., even if I'd already worked 8 hours. I was really annoyed by this for a number of reasons. First, I was consistently working 40-plus hour weeks despite occasionally leaving before 5. Second, if I left early, it was usually under 5 minutes, and if it was more, I would tell my manager, even if it was less than 15 minutes. Third, my manager ended her day at 4, so it's not like she stayed until 5, either. Fourth, why even have the 15-minute rule in the employee handbook if it didn't apply to everyone? I went to HR and told them what my manager said and asked if they had or were planning on eliminating the 15-minute rule. They said no, but that I should just humor my manager for a week or 2. They also told me to BCC their office on every time I had to email my manager about leaving before 5. By this point, I was pissed but decided to play along. For the next week I got to work 10 minutes early and only took a 30-minute lunch. This meant I could technically leave at 4:50. Instead, I would schedule an email to be sent to my manager and HR between 4:55 and 59 each day telling her that I had to leave before the end of my shift. Then I would clock out at those times. At my next 1:1, I got chewed out for going to HR behind my manager's back and was told I didn't need to email her about leaving before 5 anymore. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.